Chapter 19. Tangerine of Mindfulness. When Sujata brought Siddhartha's food that noon, she found him sitting beneath the pippala tree, as beautiful as a young morning. His face and body radiated peace, joy, and equanimity. She had seen him sitting solemnly and majestically beneath the pippala tree over 100 times, and yet today there was something different about him. Looking at Siddhartha, Sujata felt all her sorrows and worries vanish. Happiness, as fresh as a spring breeze, filled her heart. She felt there was nothing else she needed or wanted on this earth, that everything in the universe was already good and beneficial, and that no one needed to worry or despair any more. Sujata took a few steps forward and placed the food before Siddhartha. She bowed before him. She felt the peace and joy within Siddhartha enter herself. Siddhartha smiled at her and said, "Here, sit down with me. I thank you for bringing me food and water these past months. Today is the happiest day of my life, because last night I found the great way. Please enjoy this happiness too. In the near future, I will go to teach this path to all others." Sujata looked up with surprise. "You will be going? You mean you will leave us?" Siddhartha smiled kindly. "Yes, I must leave, but I won't abandon you children. Before I leave, I will show you the path I have discovered." Sujata was not very reassured. She just wanted to ask him more, but he spoke first. "I will remain with you children for at least several more days in order to share what I have learned with you. Only then will I take to the road. But that doesn't mean I will be apart from you forever. From time to time, I will return to visit you children." Sujata felt comforted. She sat down and opened the banana leaf to reveal the offering of rice. She sat silently at Siddhartha's side as he ate. She watched as he broke off pieces of rice and dipped them in sesame salt. Her heart was filled with inexpressible happiness. When he finished eating, Siddhartha asked Sujata to return home. He said he wanted to meet with the village children that afternoon in the forest. Many children came, including Svasti's brother and sisters. The boys had all bathed and put on clean clothes. The girls wore their loveliest saris. Sujata's was an ivory-coloured one. Nandabala wore a sari the colour of banana shoots, and Bhima's sari was pink. The children, looking as fresh and colourful as flowers, sat around Siddhartha beneath the pippala tree. Sujata brought a basket full of coconut and chunks of palm sugar as a special treat. The children scooped out the tasty coconut meat and ate it with the delicious sugar. Nandabala and Subhash brought a basket full of tangerines. Siddhartha sat with the children, his happiness complete. Rupak offered him a chunk of coconut with a piece of palm sugar on a pippala leaf. Nandabala offered him a tangerine. Siddhartha accepted their offerings and ate with the children. They were still enjoying their lunch when Sujata made an announcement. "Dear friends, today is the happiest day of our teacher. He has discovered the great way. I feel this is also a very important day for me. Brothers and sisters, let us consider this a day of great jubilation for all of us. We are here today to celebrate the enlightenment of our teacher. Respected teacher, The great path has been found. We know you cannot stay with us forever. Please teach us the things you think we might be able to understand. Sujata joined her palms together and bowed to Gautama to express her respect and devotion. Nandabala and the other children also joined their palms and bowed with deepest sincerity. Siddhartha quietly gestured for the children to sit back up, and he said, "You are all intelligent children, and I am sure you will be able to understand and practice the things I will share with you. The great path I have discovered is deep and subtle, but anyone willing to apply his or her heart and mind can understand and follow it. When you children peel a tangerine, you can eat it with awareness or without awareness. What does it mean to eat a tangerine in awareness? When you are eating the tangerine, you are aware you are eating a tangerine. You fully experience its lovely fragrance and sweet taste. When you peel the tangerine, you know you are peeling the tangerine. When you remove a slice and put it in your mouth, you know that you are removing a slice and putting it in your mouth. When you experience the lovely fragrance and sweet taste of this tangerine, you are aware that you are experiencing the lovely fragrance and the sweet taste of the tangerine. The tangerine Nandabala offered me has 9 sections. I ate each morsel in awareness and saw how precious and wonderful it was. I did not forget the tangerine, and thus the tangerine became something very real for me. If the tangerine is real, the person eating it is real. That is what it means to eat a tangerine in awareness. Children, what does it mean to eat a tangerine without awareness? When you are eating the tangerine, you do not know that you are eating the tangerine. You do not experience the lovely fragrance and the sweet taste of the tangerine. When you peel the tangerine, you do not know that you are peeling the tangerine. When you remove a slice and put it in your mouth, you do not know that you are removing a slice and putting it in your mouth. When you smell the fragrance or taste the tangerine, you do not know that you are smelling the fragrance and tasting the tangerine. Eating a tangerine in such a way, you cannot appreciate its precious and wonderful nature. If you are not aware that you are eating the tangerine is not real. If the tangerine is not real, the person eating it is not real either. Children, that is eating a tangerine without awareness. Children, eating the tangerine in mindfulness means that while eating the tangerine, you are truly in touch with it. Your mind is not chasing after thoughts of yesterday or tomorrow, but is dwelling fully in the present moment. The tangerine is truly present. Living in mindful awareness means to live in the present moment, your mind and body dwelling in the very here and now. A person who practices mindfulness can see things in the tangerine that others are unable to see. An aware person can see the tangerine tree, the tangerine blossom in the spring, the sunlight and rain which nourished the tangerine. Looking deeply, one can see 10,000 things which have made the tangerine possible. Looking at a tangerine, a person who practices awareness can see all the wonders of the universe and how all things interact with one another. Children, Our daily life is just like a tangerine. Just as a tangerine is comprised of sections, each day is comprised of 24 hours. 1 hour is like one section of tangerine. Living all 24 hours of a day is like eating all the sections of a tangerine. The path I have found is the path of living each hour of the day in awareness. Mind and body always dwelling in the present moment. The opposite is to live in forgetfulness. If we live in forgetfulness, we do not know that we are alive. We do not fully experience life because our mind and body are not dwelling in the here and now. Gautama looked at Sujata and said her name. Yes, teacher? Sujata joined her palms. Do you think a person who lives in awareness will make many errors or few? Respected teacher, a person who lives in awareness will make very few errors. My mother always tells me that a girl should pay attention to how she walks, stands, speaks, laughs, and works, in order to avoid thoughts, words, and actions that might cause sorrow to herself or others. Just so, Sujata. A person who lives in awareness knows what she is thinking, saying, and doing. Such a person can avoid thoughts, words, and actions that cause suffering for herself and others. Children, living in awareness means to live in the present moment. One is aware of what is taking place within oneself and in one's surroundings. One is in direct contact with life. If one continues to live in such a way, one will be able to deeply understand oneself and one's surroundings. Understanding leads to tolerance and love. When all beings understand one another, they will accept and love one another. Then there will not be so much suffering in the world. What do you think, Svasti? Can people love if they are unable to understand? Respected teacher, without understanding, love is most difficult. It reminds me of something that happened to my sister Bhima. One night she cried all night long until my sister Bala lost her patience and spanked Bhima. That only made Bhima cry more. I picked Bhima up and sensed that she was feverish. I was sure her head ached from the fever. I called Bala and told her to place her hand on Bhima's forehead. When she did that, she understood at once why Bhima was crying. Her eyes softened, and she took Bhima into her arms and sang to her with love. Bhima stopped crying, even though she still had a fever. Respected teacher, I think that was because Bala understood why Bhima was upset. And so I think that without understanding, love is not possible. Just so, Vasti. Love is possible only when there is understanding. And only with love can there be acceptance. Practice living in awareness, children, and you will deepen your understanding. You will be able to understand yourselves, other people, and all things. And you will have hearts of love. That is the wonderful path I have discovered. Svasti joined his palms. Respected teacher, could we call this path the path of awareness? Siddhartha smiled. Surely, we can call it the path of awareness. I like that very much. The path of awareness leads to perfect awakening. Sujata joined her palms to ask permission to speak. You are the awakened one, the one who shows how to live in awareness. Can we call you the awakened one? Siddhartha nodded. That would please me very much. Sujata's eyes shone. She continued, awaken in Magadhi is pronounced Bud. A person who is awakened would be called Buddha. We can call you Buddha. Siddhartha nodded. All the children were delighted. 14-year-old Nalaka, the oldest boy in the group, spoke. Respected Buddha, we are very happy to receive your teaching on the path of awareness. Sujata has told me how you have meditated beneath this pippala tree for the past 6 months, and how just last night you attained the Great Awakening. Respected Buddha, this pippala tree is the most beautiful one in all the forest. Can we call it the Tree of Awakening, the Bodhi tree? The word Bodhi shares the same root as the word Buddha, and also means awakening. Gautama nodded his head. He was delighted too. He had not guessed that during this gathering with the children, the path himself, even the great tree, would receive special names. Nandabala joined his palms. It is growing dark and we must return to our homes, but we will come back to receive more of your teachings soon. The children all stood, joined their palms like lotus buds to thank the Buddha. They strolled home chattering like a flock of happy birds. The Buddha was happy too. He decided to stay in the forest for a longer period of time in order to explore ways to best sow the seeds of awakening, and to allow himself as well special time to enjoy the great peace and joy that attaining the path had brought him. Chapter 20. The Deer. Every day the Buddha bathed in the Naranjara river. He did walking meditation along the river banks and along the small forest paths his own steps had created. He sat in meditation on the shore beside the flowing river or beneath the Bodhi tree while hundreds of birds chirped amongst its branches. He had realized his vow. He knew he must return to Kapilavatthu, where so many awaited news of his quest. He recalled as well King Bimbisara in the city of Rajagaha. He felt a special affinity for the young king and wished to visit him also. There were also his 5 former companions. He knew they each possessed the ability to attain liberation quickly, and he wanted to find them. No doubt they still dwelled nearby. River, sky, moon and stars, mountains, forest, every blade of grass, and every mote of dust were transformed for the Buddha. He knew that the long years he wandered in search of the way had not been wasted. Indeed, thanks to his trials and hardships, he had finally discovered the way in his own heart. Every living being possessed the heart of enlightenment. The seeds of enlightenment existed in everyone. Living beings did not need to seek enlightenment outside of themselves, because all the wisdom and strength of the universe was already present in them. This was the Buddha's great discovery, and was cause for all to rejoice. The children came to visit him often. The Buddha was happy to see that the way of liberation could be expressed simply and naturally. Even poor country children who had never attended school could understand his teaching. This greatly encouraged him. One day, the children arrived with a basket full of tangerines. They wanted to eat the tangerines in awareness in order to practice the very first lesson the Buddha had taught them. Sujata bowed gracefully before the Buddha and then held the basket before him. He joined his palms together like a lotus bud and took a tangerine. Sujata offered the basket to Svasti, who was sitting by the Buddha's side. He too joined his palms together and took a tangerine. She offered the basket to each child until everyone had a tangerine. She sat down and placed her palms together before taking a tangerine for herself. All the children sat silently. The Buddha told them to follow their breath and smile. Then he lifted his tangerine into his left hand and looked deeply at it. The children followed his example. He slowly peeled his tangerine, and the children began to peel theirs. Teacher and students enjoyed their tangerines in silent awareness. When everyone was finished eating, Bala gathered up the peels. The children had greatly enjoyed eating their tangerines mindfully with the Buddha. The Buddha took great pleasure in sharing such a practice with the children. The children visited the Buddha in the afternoons. He showed them how to sit still and to follow their breath in order to calm their minds when they felt sad or angry. He taught them walking meditation to refresh their minds and bodies. He taught them to look deeply at others and at their own actions in order to be able to see, to understand, and to love. The children understood all he taught them. Nandabala and Sujata spent an entire day sewing a new robe to offer to the Buddha. It was the colour of bricks, similar to the cloth of the Buddha's old robe. When Sujata learned he had to take the cemetery cloth used to cover the corpse of her former household servant, who died of typhoid fever, she wanted to weep. The Buddha was sitting beneath the Bodhi tree when the two girls arrived to offer him the robe. They waited quietly for him to emerge from his meditation. When they presented him with the new robe, he was very happy. "I have need of this robe," he said. He told them he would keep the old cloth as well, in order to have something to wear whenever he washed his new robe. Nandabala and Sujata privately resolved to sew him another robe soon. One day, Sujata's 12-year-old girlfriend, Balagupta, asked the Buddha to speak to them about friendship. Just the day before, Balagupta had had an argument with her closest friend, Jatalika. She had not wanted to stop by Jatalika's house on her way to see the Buddha the following day, and only did so at Sujata's insistence. Jatalika only agreed to join them because Sujata was there. When the girls arrived at the Bodhi tree, Balagupta and Jatalika sat far apart from one another. The Buddha told the children about the friendship shared by a deer, a bird, and a turtle. He told them that the story had taken place several thousand years before, when he was a deer in a past life. The children looked surprised, but he explained, "In previous lives, we have all been earth, stones, dew, wind, water, and fire. We have all been mosses, grasses, trees, insects, fish, turtles, birds, and mammals. I have seen this most clearly in my meditations. Thus, in one life, I was a deer. This is quite an ordinary thing. I can still remember a life in which I was a jagged rock upon a mountain peak, and another life in which I was a plumeria tree. It is the same for all of you. The story I'm going to tell you is about a deer, a bird, a turtle, and a hunter. Perhaps one of you was the bird, and another the turtle. We have all existed in times when there were not yet any humans, or even birds and mammals on earth. There were only plants beneath the seas, and trees and vegetation on the earth's surface. In those times we may have been stones, dew, or plants. Afterwards we experienced lives as birds, as all kinds of animals, and finally as human beings. Right now, we are more than just human beings. We are rice plants, tangerines, rivers, and air, because without these things we could not be. When you children look at rice plants, coconuts, tangerines, and water, remember that in this life you depend on many other beings for your existence. These other beings are part of you. If you can see that, you will experience true understanding and love. Although the story I'm about to tell you took place several thousand years ago, it could just as easily take place this very moment. Listen carefully and see whether or not you have something in common with the animals in this story. Then the Buddha began to tell his tale. At that time, the Buddha was a deer who lived in a forest which had a clear lake where the deer liked to drink. A turtle lived in the lake's waters, and a magpie lived in the branches of a willow tree beside the lake. Deer, turtle, and magpie were very close friends. One day, a hunter followed day-old tracks left by deer that led to the edge of the lake. There he left a trap made of strong ropes before returning to his hut on the outskirts of the forest. Later that day, when deer came for a drink of water, he was caught by the trap. He cried out and was heard by turtle and magpie. Turtle crawled out of the water, and magpie flew down from her nest. They discussed how best to help their friend get out of his predicament. Magpie said, "Sister Turtle, your jaws, they're sturdy and strong. You can use them to chew and cut through these ropes. As for me, I'll find a way to prevent the hunter from coming back here." Magpie then flew off in haste. Turtle began to gnaw at the ropes. Magpie flew to the hunter's hut and perched on a mango branch outside his front door all night to wait for him. When day broke, the hunter took a sharp knife and walked out of his door. As soon as she saw him, Magpie flew into his face with all her might. Struck in the face by the bird, the hunter was momentarily dazed and went back inside his hut. He lay down on the bed to rest a moment. When he got up, he paused for a moment, and then, still clutching his sharp knife, went out of the back door of his hut. But clever Magpie had outguessed him. She was waiting at the back, perched on a jackfruit branch. Again she flew into his face, smacking him hard. Struck in the face twice by a bird, the hunter went back into his house to think things over. He decided it was an unlucky day and that perhaps it would be best to remain home until tomorrow. The next morning he rose early. He picked up his sharp knife and, as a precaution, covered his face with a hat before he walked out of the door. Seeing she could no longer attack the hunter's face, Magpie sped back to the forest to warn her friends. "The hunter! is on his way. Turtle had almost chewed through the last of the ropes, but the last rope seemed as hard as steel. Her jaws were raw and bloody from chewing non-stop through 2 nights and a day. Still she did not stop. Just then the hunter appeared. Frightened, Deer gave a mighty kick which broke through the last rope and set him free. Deer ran into the forest. Magpie flew up into the willow tree, but Turtle was so exhausted from her efforts that she could not move. The hunter was angry to see the deer escape. He picked up the turtle and tossed her into his leather sack, which he left hanging on a branch of the willow tree. Then he went off to find Deer. Deer stood concealed behind some bushes, and so saw Turtle's predicament. My friends risked their lives for me, he thought. Now it is time for me to do the same for them. Deer stepped out in full view of the hunter. He pretended to stumble as though very tired, and then he turned away and hobbled weakly down the path. The hunter thought, the deer is almost out of strength. I will stalk it and soon kill it with my knife. The hunter pursued Deer deeper and deeper into the forest. Deer managed to stay just out of the hunter's reach. When they were far from the lake, Deer suddenly broke into a run until he was out of the hunter's sight. He covered his hoofprints and then returned to the lake. He used his antlers to lift the leather bag off the branch and to shake Turtle out. Magpie joined her 2 friends. You both saved me from sure death today at the hunter's hand, said Deer. I fear he will return here before long. Magpie, fly to a safer spot in the forest. Sister Turtle, crawl back into the water and hide, and I will run back into the forest. When the hunter arrived back at the lake, he found his leather sack on the ground, empty. Frustrated, he picked it up and, still clutching his knife, trudged home. The children had listened to the Buddha's tale with wide-eyed interest. When the Buddha described how raw and bloody Turtle's jaws had become from chewing the ropes to save her friend, Rupak and Subash almost cried. The Buddha asked the children, what do you think, children? Long ago I was Deer. Were any of you Turtle? 4 children raised their hand, including Sujata. The Buddha then asked, and who among you was Magpie? Svasti raised his hand, as did Jatalika and Balagupta. Sujata looked at Jalalika and then at Balagupta. If you were both Magpie, that makes you 1 person. What good is it for Magpie to be mad at Magpie? Can't our friendship equal that of Magpie, Turtle, and Deer? Balagupta stood up and walked over to Jatalika. She took her friend's hand in her own 2 hands. Jatalika pulled Balagupta into her arms and then slid over to make a place for Balagupta to sit. The Buddha smiled. You children understand the story well. Remember that tales like the one I have just recounted are taking place all the time right in our own daily lives. Dear friends, this is where we pause in our story. Please go gently. Cheerio for now.